Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Astrology podcast. My name is Ellen Sky. If you are here for the first time, welcome. I am an astrologer and a numerologist, and call me a spiritual strategist, and I'm best known for cutting right through the noise and bringing the most important messages to you. I hope that you are having an amazing day wherever you're listening from. Before we're going to dive into July, I want to say something that I think is incredibly important for all of us to remember. I believe this is where astrology gets misunderstood. The planets don't force events to happen. I think a lot of people think that because it is almost like as if we're putting the planets kind of above us. And they are. They are above us. They're all around us. But they don't force events to happen. They actually just create an atmosphere. They create sort of a weather atmosphere. Think about the weather. If you know that a thunderstorm is coming, you don't panic and, immediately grab an umbrella and sit on your couch. I mean, I hope you're not doing that. Astrology works in the same way. It doesn't remove your free will. It helps you understand the energetic climate, the energetic weather, so that you can make better decisions. And July has one of those most fascinating stories, I think, that we have seen all year. It is an incredibly unpredictable month. Don't count on, certain things to go in a particular way. Because if I had to summarize this month in a sentence, I've been thinking about this long and hard because July is just so fascinating to me. Probably one of the most fascinating months until we hit the Venus retrograde, which is going to be another fascinating plot twist. But basically, July isn't asking you to change your life. Not at all. It's asking you to change your perception, the context from which you're operating from. Because once your perception changes, once you have different context, your reality begins changing with it. Every major transit this month is going to build on the previous one. They always do, but then sometimes it can feel random. This month, you are going to feel that they are really there's a storyline that's building. Nothing is going to be random. And we begin the month with disruption. We then move into confusion. And then our confusion kind of deepens sort of an idea that we've been here before, a deja vu moment, right? It goes into clarity, but the clarity that we're getting, I really do believe is going to have a lot to do with the ties that we are either coming back into. Think past lives. If you believe in past lives, I do. I think that we are going to realize, oh my gosh, this is the karmic story I'm diving into. This is what is going on between me and this other person or these people, this group dynamic, if that's where you'll end up being as far as relationships go. Romantically, I think that we are going to encounter people that, again, deja vu. We kind of know this before. And those relationships change our future now. It's really interesting. It's like that Cancerian Mercury retrograde with the Uranus Gemini. They're going to create a past into the future sort of catapult is the best way I could say this. Because by the end of July, many of you won't necessarily have a completely different life, but you'll have a completely different understanding of your life. And I think that is going to be really important here to point out, because sometimes that is sort of the beginning of a major change for somebody else. And then we have to work things out, right? Because once we understand something from a completely different angle, we have access, we have knowledge, and we need to do something with it. So one thing I also want you to notice throughout this episode is that every planet has an agenda. Mars wants movement, Venus wants connection, Saturn wants maturity, Jupiter wants expansion, and these planets are in these roles, and that will never change. Because when planets meet, they're having a conversation. Sometimes they support one another, and sometimes They don't like each other. Sometimes they tell each other to F off. Okay. And that is sort of what we're going to be breaking down. Our job here in today's podcast is to understand what that conversation is trying to teach us. So let's begin. July 4th, which is just so interesting that it's July 4th, especially here for the United States. Mars is in Gemini, conjunct Uranus in Gemini at 3 degrees. Let's break this down. If there is one transit that sets the tone for the entire month, it's this one for sure. I mean, I almost feel like this is one of those moments where it's going to turn into like the planets basically going, I told you so. Why didn't you listen to me? But a little bit later. It's going to have this compound effect all throughout the end of the year and into January of 2027. It's really hard for me to explain it in all one sentence, but this is one of those months where the month is basically starting out with, are you going to deny the truth? Imagine waking up, you're believing your life is headed in one direction, and then something happens, a conversation that absolutely changes everything. It's what you hear, it's a piece of information, it's a decision, it's somebody telling you something very specific. That's when Mars meets Uranus in Gemini. Mars meeting Uranus in Gemini is very electric. It has an urge to want to be independent. It has an urge and a taste behind freedom. You are determined to break free from something. You are determined to have this rush of energy towards independence. It's an electric energy, but it's electric force energy coupled with enthusiasm. Now, at 3, one of the things that is going to happen here is that we are receiving a piece of information that changes our belief. Okay? Because the thing is that Uranus doesn't want comfort. Uranus has a completely different personality than Mars. Mars is always interested in movement. It wants to act. It wants us to stop waiting for the perfect moment and start kind of participating in our own lives, right? Uranus doesn't care about that. Uranus wants freedom. So if you have been living in a situation, some kind of versions of relationship circumstances where you feel confined, Uranus is going to come here and show you very important things. Uranus has no problem shaking the table until you finally notice what is going on. So when you put these two planets together in Gemini, the sign of communication, information, learning, technology, transformation, the mind, and suddenly something pops up that changes basically the way that you think. So notice that I didn't say something changes your life. It just changes your perspective. And this is why this month is going to be such a big month for a lot of us, because perspective always comes before reality, in my opinion. That's what I have experienced. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here with this, July 4th transit, because this is a big one. I want you to think of almost like an archetype of Robin Hood a little bit, okay? Or you can think of, let me see, what other archetype could we talk about? We could talk about like Artemis, okay? These are like the archetypes I think would sort of explain the energy behind this Mars-Uranus. It's decisive courage and it's a willpower. So what does that mean in real life? So here's the thing. you are either going to encounter a situation where there is courage that comes in, and it comes in fast, and it changes the situation based on the information that's being revealed. Or it is going to be one of those moments where it's reckless courage and it's defiance. And you're going to find yourself in this impulsive, rash moment. And you're going to take an impulsive sort of rash action. And that then turns into anger. You could also, in the collective realm, we could be experiencing some very upsetting, violent moments. And we've had a lot of those. We've had a lot of those already going into 2026. So I am praying that we are not going to be in that situation. But this could be like one of those moments where, violence breaks out in a public situation out of nowhere. And I hope that we are not going to be in this place. But it's a sudden eruption of energy. Okay. So those are kind of like the moments I want you to pay attention to. So if you're going somewhere that is in a larger, public area, you want to pay attention. There's a sudden change that could erupt, a reckless, sort of courageous moment, and everybody else is impacted because of it. Now, the very lowest frequency of this is going to be sort of the audacity to be attracted to danger, okay? And somebody does something that then goes into sort of this sudden confrontation, and there is a sense of revenge attached to this, okay? Only because we've got other planets in the sign of Cancer, and it has to do with the past. It has to do with the past. You could be in a situation where you really want to show somebody something, okay, about who you are. You want them to see who you are and what you're capable of, but this sort of turns into this rash, kind of moment. Okay, now let's go back to information that we're receiving. What is the kind of information that we're receiving? The kind of information that we're receiving has to do with changing our belief. Okay, this is somebody who is bold enough to reveal the information to us. So if you are going to be in relationship dynamics or in group dynamics, in any kind of dynamic where other people are involved, this 3 degrees really matters, because it is a very curious degree. It's a restless degree. It's adaptable. It's a degree that does want more information once one little piece is being freely given up. It asks questions before it can settle on the answer. That's important, because this conjunction isn't just asking you to have everything figured out, It's asking you to become more curious about asking enough questions so that the story that you're telling yourself has more information to it. Because maybe your intuition has been telling you something, or maybe you didn't know and you feel blindsided. So you got to ask more questions. And that's what I think is the best to do here to navigate this energy is that no matter how hard it will be, don't try to act fast. Try to stay with the curiosity side of this energy. Mars and Uranus don't necessarily tell you that the story is wrong, but they simply introduce new information, okay? And the story still has to unfold, and you may need more information in order to complete the opinion. Now, I want to go back one more time to the collectively. So on a global level, I expect the pace of information to accelerate dramatically, okay? Something comes through in the news where this could look like a major kind of news breaking very quickly, a political announcement, okay? I also want to say, whatever political announcement this is going to be, what I'm seeing, the image that I'm seeing is a map. And on this map, something is split. It's almost like the map, something is separated on this map. like a state or a city or something like this is coming up. And I don't know why, but I want to give you guys what I'm remote reviewing so that you're prepared. There could also be technology developments. So we could be hearing like cybersecurity conversations, transportation disruptions, or some kind of scientific breakthrough that immediately dominates the headlines, okay? Because Gemini governs communication networks. So we may also see conversations surrounding AI, media, journalism, social media platforms, education, and how information spreads throughout society. I think that that is something that we need to keep in mind with this particular transit. One story has the potential, whatever is happening in the beginning of July, one story has the potential to completely change the public conversation. What I personally believe is that this is the beginning now of a very tough 9-month period collectively. That's what I believe. I don't want to deliver these types of news, okay? But especially if you are impacted by things that have been happening in the Western world, I think that where we're headed right now is a very tough 9-month period. And within these 9 months, we are going to come out on the other side better. However, whatever is happening within these 9 months is not going to be easy in any way. I'm so sorry to be, giving this type of news, but this period is about becoming better, but we are not going to be able to see that unless we actively seek the bigger picture. And that's why I'm here. Also, notice how often the collective reality shifts because one new piece of information enters the picture. And that, my friends, is the Gemini energy. Okay? So you now have a little bit of preparation for July 4th. Let's move to July 7th. What's fascinating about July 7th is that Neptune retrogrades in Aries at 4 degrees. Very specific breakdown. So we go from a very loud month, like we enter the month in a loud way. There's a lot of commotion. And the spiritual lesson right in the beginning of the month is that somehow fear becomes louder. Also, there is this thing that we're running into, that our fear becomes louder than our intuition, that logic becomes louder than the truth. And when past experiences become evidence that the future will repeat, you kind of freeze a little bit. And what's interesting about this is that we have Neptune now deciding 3 days after this whole entire explosive energy to go retrograde. So it freezes our intuition and our sort of faith dramatically. So 3 days after, the energy shifts. Neptune quiets down our pipeline to God, essentially. And now we have to have tremendous amount of faith, because at 4, there is some kind of unsettled feeling. There is a breakdown at 4. As above, so below. We realize something is happening for a reason, but now we can't really quite access it. And it's really interesting because Neptune is one of those most really also misunderstood planets, because people often reduce it down to just dreams and spirituality. And I don't think that there's much more than that. Okay. Neptune governs the stories that we believe, because there is faith. Okay. There's our ideals, our fantasies, our imagination. But I would say that faith is probably one of the biggest ones with Neptune. Our ability to see the possibility beyond what currently exists is really important, because we got to be able to remove boundaries. So wherever Neptune is at in your chart, that's where you want to take a look at. Okay, so the challenge is that Neptune can also blur the lines, right? Between what has been inspiring you, what's illusion. Sometimes there is delusion with Neptune. If you know anything about the story of Neptune, the god that was coming out of the waters, on his horse. Well, the horse is wet. Things are slippery. You might slip. You might So more on that later. What I'm trying to say is that now place Neptune into Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. This is where identity begins. It's where we ask, who am I? What do I want? What am I willing to fight for? When Neptune enters Aries, many people begin imagining an entire new version of themselves. It becomes possible. But now Neptune begins moving in this backward motion, not necessarily backwards like the planet is moving, but it's slowing down. So when we say, retrograde, it's not an actual backwards movement. It's just really slowing down. And this is where something fascinating happens, okay? The dream isn't disappearing. The illusion around the dream begins dissolving. Because you have to kind of deal with what is being given to you with a bigger sense of faith. All right? Sometimes we chase a goal because it genuinely belongs to us. We feel in our heart it should have been given to us. It should have been me. It should have been this. It should have been that. Sometimes we chase it because we wanted someone's approval. I mean, have you heard this one before? I know I have, right? Chasing someone's approval. We want somebody to see us. We want somebody to say, yes, what you're doing is awesome. I mean, we do it in the collective on social media all the time. Sometimes we chase it because we thought success would finally make us worthy. Sometimes we chase it because we don't know who we'd be without it. Some people, and I see this a lot right now, especially in the sign of like this Aries energy, people are really chasing something because they don't know who they are without it. And when I say they don't know what they are without it, I'm talking about a particular persona, not their character. I'm talking about a persona, the mask, the persona that they put on. Now, Neptune is going to go through a process here where it's going to ask you to separate the dream from the illusion surrounding it. And that, my friends, is uncomfortable. Okay? Incredibly liberating, but uncomfortable. Now, at 4 degrees, it speaks to a breakdown in foundation, a breakdown in support, structure, stability. Something new has to emerge. Because this particular Neptune in Aries retrograde isn't asking, what do you want? It's asking, is your future built on truth? Very, very different energy. Is your future built on truth? I mean, whatever you just answered right there, that's your clue. Whatever you just answered to yourself, that's your clue. Okay? I would go and deal with some of this right now because this 4th degree is a breakdown that also will have a compound effect as we go into the later energies this year. Now, collectively, this can coincide with changing public narratives, okay? Stories that once seemed unquestionable may begin facing big amounts of skepticism at this time. Leadership, media, spirituality, technology, and even the way that we define truth becomes major, major topics of discussion. So we have to dig in deeper into our faith and the topics of faith. And what we really have faith in has to be generated from a self-made courage. Okay? That is the thing that is fascinating about this 3 days after this sort of explosive energy. We may also see people becoming more aware of misinformation and AI generated content, propaganda. Okay, there's a ton of it out there. A lot of people actually don't know that it's propaganda or the ways perception itself can be influenced. I think that the collective is going to start asking here, what have we accepted as fact simply because we didn't want it to be true? That's a very Neptunian question. July 9th, Venus enters Virgo. Well, a completely different focus on relationship dynamics, but Venus isn't only about romance. Romance is only one expression of Venus. The way that you spend your money, the people that you surround yourself with are all Venus. The standards that you have for yourself are Venus. What you're willing to tolerate, what brings you peace, everything begins with value. And when Venus enters Virgo, our value becomes more discerning. So now we're discerning our value more. If you want to know this particular aspect of your chart, on Instagram and on TikTok, and also on my YouTube channel, on the shorts part of my YouTube channel, I have done so many individual readings for all of the signs. So make sure that you go back and check it out. We're still releasing it, so a lot of it will still come out every single day until the mid-month of July, but make sure you check that out. It's Island Aura Sky. July 12th, the Sun conjunct Mercury retrograde in Cancer at 20 degrees. This is the day where puzzle pieces begin to come together for sure. This is one of my favorite transits of the month, I would say, not because something dramatic necessarily is happening, but because an understanding is happening. And there's a huge difference here. The beginning of the July, our minds are filled with new information. And now the Sun comes in and it shines a light on everything Mercury has been reviewing. Because Cancer is deeply connected to memory. And you may have had these hits of intuition in the past and some kind of insecurity emotionally about a place, people, experience that shaped you. And now Mercury has been revisiting those stories and the Sun is going to illuminate them. Suddenly, it makes sense. Suddenly, you understand why a relationship moved the way that it did, why a job didn't work out, why a move had to happen, why someone entered your life for a season instead of a lifetime. These are the types of things that you're going to be able to understand, but also at a much deeper level because you review something that is deeply tied to the past and habits and habitual patterns. So I love this conjunction because it reminds us that clarity doesn't always arrive through logic. Sometimes clarity arrives through accepting something, and that is the feel that I'm getting behind this. July 14th, a new moon in Cancer at 21 degrees. We're continuously planting the future from an emotional place because every new moon represents some kind of a new cycle that is coming through. But not every beginning is visible. And I think some of them, they happen in a way where we just got to commit. We got to commit and we got to do the work. And that is what I'm getting from this new moon in Cancer. It is at 21 degrees. We're aiming for something different. We're aiming for a different feel. This moon is going to be sort of like build yourself from the inside out. If you are constantly talking yourself out of something, then this is going to be maybe the beginning of you not doing that anymore. If you're constantly feeling that you're disconnected from certain environments, this is the time where you're going to start digging into it and saying, I think I'm going to have to generate something different because you don't want the same emotional cycle. So I think that this new moon is going to be really great for breaking some kind of a pattern. So if you're setting intentions, definitely think about breaking a pattern. As far as like manifestation goes, how can you break a certain pattern? How can you, what can you replace it with? Who you would have to be? That is the kind of thing that this new moon is going to be great in. All right. And then July 22nd, the Sun enters Leo, and hallelujah. Okay, the Sun loves it here. Without a doubt, this is going to be a great kind of like spark that is going to start to come back. After Mercury starts to move direct, and things are going to start to move, but maybe not as fast as you think. It is just one of those things where there is now another particular buildup that's happening, and there's going to be timeline shifts that are going to come with this. July 26th, Saturn is going to retrograde as well. I mean, this one is a little tricky. I feel like this is going to be one of the biggest things that we should be paying attention to the rest of this year, because Saturn retrograde in Aries at 14 degrees, that's very specific. It's probably one of the biggest Saturn retrogrades that we could be experiencing. And the reason I say that is because this is going to come with consequences, okay? And the consequences are very shocking in nature. Okay, in astrology, Saturn is often called the taskmaster or the teacher, but I think there's a better way to understand this planet. Saturn is reality. It's a moment where life asks, can you actually support the future you're trying to create right now in this moment? Are you doing the work? But are you doing the work in a 14-degree style? Because dreaming about your future and being prepared for your future are two completely different things. So throughout July, you've received information, you've questioned your identity, you've reevaluated your relationships, you've gained emotional something, whether it's clarity or information. And so now Saturn comes in, and I think that Saturn is going to be a moment where when it's retrograding, it's really going to pause a very specific subject in your life that has to do with the way in which you communicate, the way in which you think, who you are, and if you are operating from a place of integrity. So this is where I think that we are realizing, okay, I have to do something, and the journey begins. I have to do something that really aligns. I have to do something that I don't necessarily want to do. So this is sort of a very unusual placement, because Saturn and Aries don't naturally speak the same language. Aries wants to begin, Saturn wants to prepare. Aries says, let's go. Saturn says, not until the foundation is strong enough. Aries wants immediate results. Saturn believes lasting success is built one decision at a time. Neither one is wrong, but together they create tension. So you may feel incredibly motivated to move forward, while simultaneously you are going to be smacked in the face with delays, responsibilities, challenges that force you to take a look at the situation. And here's the important part, okay? Whatever it is, it's not necessarily blocking you, but it has a learning curve to it. You haven't been here before. You haven't done this before. So although you might be in a place of celebration of some sort, you might also have to think about protecting you from something. And you're building it way too quick. You're rushing into it way too fast. You are, okay? I think that you get my point. A fascinating way to end the month is July 29th. The sun conjunct Jupiter in Leo. Jupiter's now in Leo. One of the luckiest transits of the entire year. Think of somebody opening up the curtains after they've been sitting in a dark room for, multiple months. And so Cancer season had us look us inward, and then now Leo season is like, it's time to come alive again. So this is a moment again where the spark is being reinforced. The sun is coming through. The sun is your identity, your life force, your confidence, your purpose. Jupiter is expansion. We are expanding it. But what's fascinating is that at the very same time that this conjunction is happening, we're also going to have a full moon in Aquarius. Well, it's at 6 degrees. So this is really interesting because 6 is relationships. It's connected to harmony, responsibility, and choices via relationships, okay? So I would say you are going to be in a place that is going to be a little, it's going to be a dichotomy. Let me explain. Every full moon is a conversation between two signs sitting directly across from one another. And sometimes one side wins, okay? I think that when we're taking a look at a Leo Aquarius axis, we have a battle who is going to shine. We have a battle between an individual and a group. Always like this. Because Aquarius wants to integrate into the group. Emotionally, we might feel like we don't know how that is going to happen. But nobody's going to talk about it. I'm just going to tell you right now. Especially at 6 degrees, nobody's talking about it. Everybody's noticing it. There is going to be a battle of who is going to outshine who. And it's starting now, between now and kind of Aquarius season. So this is going to be one of those moments. I'm sorry to be a bit more straightforward in today's podcast like this, but a lot of you are going to be in this place where you have immense amount of anxiety of doing something where you are being asked to fully shine. The sun is coming through. You've got this spark, but you now have to integrate it into some kind of a dynamic in your life. You now have to do something with this situation. Dang, my voice is cracking. I don't know what's going on, but my voice has just been in a crazy place. So you are to integrate individuality versus community. And everybody has a unique gift. And this is going to be a little bit of the battle of, me versus we. So there is this sort of dramatic moment of over excitement, over generosity, over expressions of joy, and that is going to go away. I just want to prepare you, okay? It's just one of those things where Leo is seeking attention simply to be in a place where it can shine and it can pull its creativity out. Okay, a healthy Leo doesn't seek attention simply to be seen. It becomes visible because it has something meaningful to contribute. It reminds us that, you can't shrink yourself. It doesn't help anybody. But how are we going to integrate that into a group of relationships or into a circumstance where there is relationships that are attached to all of this? This is what I think that this full moon is bringing up. There is going to be group drama of some sort. There's going to be drama in relationships. If you're not attached to a group, then it's going to be drama around a relationship. So it's just one of those things where I think that we're ending this month with a bunch of ego. I know. As I'm recording this podcast, I'm like, wow, I don't want to be like, I don't want to sound like a negative person, but sometimes we have to deliver the message as it is. And that is what this month is. This month is highly fascinating. I think that we are going to soften some of this energy beginning end of October, but right now we're just not there. We are in the higher expressive, forms. So what can you do with this energy this month? Stay open to thinking differently. Stay open to knowing that you don't know everything. Stay open to the fact that there is going to be competition of some sort. Whatever it is that you're doing, especially at the end of the month, there is going to be competition, and you don't know how this is going to go yet. You cannot settle how this is going to go yet. Let yourself celebrate. Let yourself do the things that really bring you joy, that your heart is really integrated in, but you don't really know how things are going to go yet. We've got a lot of major planets that are in a place where they're communicating to have us really contemplate. We have to contemplate, and we need this time right now to dive into these stories that might even make us feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's a new start of some sort. I do see that for many of you out there. There is some kind of a new start. And in this new start, you have to take action. You cannot hesitate. Okay? But nothing is yet set in stone. Okay? It's not set in stone yet. So it's all about absorbing, and it's all about learning rather than coming to full-blown conclusions this month. And that is the timeline shift. That is where we have to kind of figure out who we are right now, what we want to give energetically, and where we know we have to take note of some fake generosity, fake joy, because more information needs to be revealed. And it's okay to be in that place. I have a couple of images I want to share that I think are also going to be important for today's podcast. The first image that I see is for many of you, I see that you are receiving some kind of a medal. That's the image, at least, that I have in my head. It's some kind of a medal. It's something that you're receiving. You're feeling really good about it. And it's a moment of celebration. It's a moment where you realize that all the self-negative talk that you have done with yourself, it was maybe too excessive because you have reached a certain point. But now you have a great responsibility, and I want you to keep that in mind. The next image that I have for some of you, and you interpret it as you will, but I'm going to do my best to interpret this, is a snail and a money bag. It's really interesting. I think that this has to do with slow wealth and lasting wealth, okay? Whether that is actual wealth with money, it carries its home everywhere it goes and moves steadily towards the destination, okay? That snail doesn't rush. I think that money appearing with a snail can symbolize building some kind of wealth or value over time, investment or even business growth that compounds slowly. And you need patience leading to this financial stability. You need to trust the process instead of chasing the quick wins. Money is coming, but not maybe on your timeline. Lastly, I am going to draw tarot cards for the signs based on the elements. We are going to start with the fire signs. For the fire signs, I pulled the Page of Swords. So for Aries, for Leo, and for Sagittarius, the Page of Swords means that knowledge changes everything for you this month. Imagine that somebody is standing on top of a hill with a sword in their hand, okay? The wind is blowing, the clouds are moving quickly, nothing around them feels stable, yet they are completely alert, and that's you this month. You're watching, you're listening, you're learning, and I think that the page here doesn't want you to assume anything. The page questions. Before you make your next move, gather more information. That is the biggest advice that I have for you. For all the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, I pulled 3 cards. 3 cards came out, okay? I didn't pull them, but they kind of fell out. So we have the 7 of Cups. Not every opportunity is meant for you. That's how you're starting this month, okay? An image of someone that is in front of 7 beautiful cups. Well, one of those cups is a snake in the image. So this card reminds you that just because something looks exciting doesn't mean it's actually going to be exciting, okay? The next card that fell out is the 7 of Wands, which is very, very interesting because the 7 of Wands is one of those cards where it says you have to protect what you have worked so hard to build. And in a way, this month is making you see that. Okay, the climb that you have done to get to the point that you're in, the sacrifices that you have made, the discipline, the courage, the amount of time to reach a higher ground, you have to protect that. And you are going to see that you actually have divine protection. A lot of things are going to make sense, especially mid-July. Do you believe in what you've built enough to keep building it when other people are also questioning it or circumstances make you question it? And what's fascinating is starting July 21st, the Queen of Wands, okay, came out. Become the person you are wanting to become now. You are going to get this opportunity. If something didn't work out at the beginning of the month or even in June up until this time, you are going to get this opportunity and it's going to be better than what you imagined. For all of the air signs, okay, so Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, 2 things fell out here. The Hanged Man. So your greatest breakthrough comes when you stop forcing outcomes this month, okay? You might think that you're stuck, but you're actually not stuck. You're just really having to pay attention to the second card that fell out, which is the King of Pentacles. In order for you to sustain your success, okay, you have to create stability. Right now, there's been a lot of sort of like conversation around panic or quick wins or just sort of building something in a quick way. And so this month is going to create a different kind of emphasis. And that is entrepreneur energy, investor energy, mentor energy, the provider energy, the person who has learned that consistency creates success. And that is the biggest thing, okay? Fear of taking risks may come up this month, and that is going to be your clue. Actually, don't take the risk this month, okay? Especially in career, okay? This is an excellent combination for your career outlook. A period of planning before expansion, and that's going to be the most important one for you. For all the water signs, so Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, a couple of cards fell out. Okay, this is the story. Whether it has happened yet or whether it is going to unfold, don't let one disappointment sabotage whatever is happening in front of you that's trying to find you, okay? 5 of Cups fell out. This is grief. This is disappointment. This is regret. Something didn't unfold the way that you hoped for. So the 5 of Cups is interesting because it is about a focus that has been, spilled. And I think that for a lot of you, what you need to remember is that you cannot fail to notice that there's still 2 cups that are standing behind you. In the card, there's 2 more cups that are standing behind the person. Just because something is going to maybe not go the way that you hoped for, try not to stay stuck in the disappointment. The energy shifts because the Knight of Cups, okay? That is the next one that came up. The Knight of Cups is a conversation, an apology that leads you somewhere, okay? It leads you somewhere. So you may have to be the person actually to have this conversation, to give this apology. 4 of Wands came out with it. So that means there is some kind of a milestone, a successful launch, some kind of like happiness and celebration that you are going to dive into. The universe is showing you that after disappointment comes connection, after grief comes celebration. But only if you're willing to receive it, okay? Now, what is interesting is that the 5 of Swords came out with it. When we take a look at the 5 of Swords, this is where things get a little bit interesting for you, because sometimes it's about the battle happening inside of your own mind. Will you allow your past pain to create future conflicts? Will fear convince you not to trust? Will pride stop you from apologizing? Will ego make winning more important than peace? Will overthinking ruin something beautiful before it has the chance to grow? Sometimes this card is sort of a moment where we're carrying old wounds into new opportunities. We expect betrayal because we've experienced betrayal. We expect rejection because we've experienced rejection. So I think that this month is asking you to really, 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 really pay attention to this. Okay, pay attention to the stories that you're creating and recreating in your mind so that you don't just completely rely on the past to recreate the situations that are happening right now in your life. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. I'm wishing everyone the best month. I know I threw a lot at you, but I'm curious to know how this month is going to unfold for you. Let me know how things are unfolding, and I will see you in the next episode.